In southwestern Uganda, a religious movement began in the late 1980s. Its central figures included Credonia Mwarend and Joseph Kibotia. The movement was called the Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. Its leaders claimed to have received divine messages and visions connected to the Virgin Mary. They taught that strict obedience to the Ten Commandments was essential for salvation. As the movement grew, its followers were placed under strict religious rules and increasingly gave up control over important parts of their lives. Then came the prophecy. The movement expected the end of the world around the turn of the millennium. One widely reported date was December 31, 1999. The date arrived. The year changed. But the world did not end. What happened next is more difficult to reconstruct with complete certainty because accounts of the movement's prophecies and dates differ. But the movement continued, and the apocalyptic expectation did not simply disappear. Then came March 17, 2000. At the movement's compound in Kanungu, in southwestern Uganda, a large number of followers gathered inside a church building. Hundreds of people died. At first, the authorities treated the incident as a mass suicide. But the investigation soon revealed a much larger tragedy. Bodies were later discovered at other properties connected to the movement, including mass graves. The investigation concluded that many of the victims had been killed before the church fire. The total number of deaths is reported differently by different sources, but the tragedy involved hundreds of victims, with some investigations placing the total at more than 700. The leaders at the center of the movement were never brought to trial. And what had begun as a movement claiming to prepare people for salvation had become one of the deadliest religious tragedies in modern Uganda. But this story is not simply about religion. It is also about authority. How can ordinary people place so much trust in a small group of leaders? The answer is not that the followers were unintelligent. People can be influenced by fear, by hope, by the promise of salvation, and by the belief that someone has a special connection with God. This is where the story becomes a lesson for all of us. Faith and spirituality can give people hope, meaning, and community. But danger can arise when a human leader becomes unquestionable. When asking questions is treated as rebellion. When doubt is treated as sin. And when followers are expected to surrender their independence and personal decisions completely. A healthy spiritual community should allow questions. A spiritual leader can be respected without being treated as incapable of making mistakes. And when a prophecy fails, people should be allowed to ask, "What happened?" Questioning is not always disrespect. And no human being should have absolute control over another person's life simply because they claim to speak for God. The tragedy of Kanungu is not a reason to condemn religion or spirituality. It is a warning about what can happen when human authority becomes absolute and questioning becomes forbidden. Because sometimes, the most important question is not, "Do you believe?" It is, "Are you still allowed to ask why?"